up everyone. Well, we're surprised at how quickly that last video finished. That was because I was up at the house doing the editing and stuff, and it was snowing like mad. It was cold, and I noticed I had about 30 minutes already, so I thought that's enough. I'll make that one video and split this into two. Now you may notice the different titfer as well. That's because this morning it was 15 degrees F when I came down here. So that's what, 17 degrees below freezing. 17, that's 2, that's minus 10 centigrade or thereabouts. So anyway, say we've broken it into two pieces. So what I'm going to do now is turn down our centerpiece. So again, I won't go into lots of machining because that's not what this channel's about. So all I'm going to do is, I've got it right close in the jaws, the chuck here. So I'm going to center drill it so I can put the center in there, and then I'm going to turn it down to the required amount, which is slightly different because I noticed in the video I said, you know, 1 thou of shrinkage per inch, but of course it's an inch round. The shaft is an inch round, the hole is actually only half an inch, so we're only going to make it about a half, 3/4 of a thou. So let me turn this down. I've got the oven on, so I'm going to put the two pieces in that to get them heated up, and when you come back I'll have this turned down. And what I'm going to do is, I haven't cut it to length, I'm going to turn it down, and that will leave a shoulder on it at the bottom, so that will give me something to press the two halves of the shaft down against, and then when it's all cooled down I can cut it and finish the ends off, and then we can do our little bit of welding. So let me get stuck in with this, and I'll come back to you shortly. We're back for a moment because, listen to this. Quiet. Now I know, playing around with this, I got different noises from it, so that must be the quiet speed. Alright, let me get on. So there's our centerpiece turned down to about just over half a thou bigger than the hole I want. So let me go and get the first piece out of the oven. One. Come on! Oh, you bugger, come on. Okay. There we go. Now I'm actually going to put this in the press to hold it while it all cools down. Now I've cut the centerpiece to length now, so let's just give it a quick turn and see how we're doing. There's about 1 thou there. Check that it's still reasonably sharp. Now we'll... Here we go. We're going 1 to that side, 3 to that side, so that's 4 thou. which isn't bad at all. Now before I took this shaft out the lathe, I prepared it for welding the ends up. So what I've done is the equivalent of putting 2 chamfers on. I just plunged a tool in there, so I've got a chamfer on this centre shaft and one on the outer ring, and that gives me a groove to weld into. So I'm going to weld that up on both ends. Then this round about 4 thou difference here, actually remember, I couldn't just buy this shaft because you have to buy the whole thing as the middle gearbox, and that's because it's all shimmed up and everything, I guess, at the factory, so that it's all correct. And believe me, these were a really tight fit. They were basically pressed into the inner race of these ball bearings. Now I don't think I need to have it that hard a fit, because you know, with the chain on, it's going to be rather like, I think anyway, it's going to be rather like the wheel spindle in the rear wheel. And there, of course, the spindle goes in and out. So what I'm planning to do is take, say, 1 thou off each of these. Now 1 thou off this, of course, that's 1 thou off the that's the radius, so that's equivalent to taking 2 thou off. So that brings me down to only being 2 thou difference. And if I true this up a little bit as well, then when I tighten it all up, that should give us just a nice tight fit in the bearings, but it'll have these all surfaces all trued up again, or at least that's the hope. And seeing as everything else I've kept my fingers crossed about so far has worked, we should be alright. So let me go and weld up these ends, and then we'll come back. Now I've got the 2 ends welded, so let's show you them, see if I can keep them in view. There's one end, there's t'other end, and just to show you I didn't mess this end up. Whoop. There we have that going on. So let's go and put it in the lathe. Let's see what our welding did. Okay, I've set this up in the 4-jaw. As you can see, that's maybe about 1/2. There. Let's see, make sure you're still in focus. Yep. Whoa! Thank you, Welding. Look at that. I would say basically these 2 bearing surfaces are spot on with each other. Excellent. So now we move on to the next major point. Alright, wasn't that a pleasant surprise? So, there we have our new shaft. There we have our old shaft. So, we are 1 1/4 inches shorter. Which means that, whoops, I'll have to zoom you out. Out, you fool, out. That which was made for that to go in about like that. We're here today. So what to do? Well, we took 1 1/4 inches out of this, so we're going to take 1 1/4 inches out of this. Now what we're also going to do is the do I have it? Yep. The sprocket goes in there fine, but as you will see, it thins down. I'm getting deja vu again, people. Maybe I've told you, maybe I haven't. So what we're going to do anyway is we're going to set it down on the bandsaw, and we're going to cut 1 1/4 inches out here, which will bring this wide piece back here, so we should be good with that. What we're also going to have to do is the chain's going to come out the bottom of here fine, but here it's going to be up here somewhere. So we're going to have to cut a piece out of this, and what I'm planning to do then is make a piece to go in there, which will be welded in both sides, and the chain will have plenty of room above and below, and then that is going to help bring the sort of structural integrity back that cutting some of these pieces out where the chain's going to be has removed. So let's get on and mark this up and do that. So here's the shortened shaft, and you see I've put a piece on here because I didn't want the sprocket to sit on the part where there was no splines, so I've moved it out a little bit from that. So this goes in here like so. Now this edge here is the inside of the rear wheel sprocket, so as you can see I'm going to be able to move the rear sprocket in a little bit, which is nice. It gives me more space for those nuts to pass the swinging arm. So what we need to know before we can cut this case is where everything's going to be. So we have one nice flat surface here on the case, so what I'm going to be able to do is measure from that to the sprocket, and from that to the sprocket is 2.5 inches to this side of the sprocket. So let's go on and look at that on the casing itself. Here's the front of the case. That would be where the shaft would have come out of. So this is the edge that we measured from, and the first thing I measured was 2.5 inches, right? So 2.5 inches is to this mark, so that's where the sprocket's going to be. Now we want to take 1.25 inches out of this, and things fall quite nicely. I wanted to take 1.25 inches exactly off the center line of this, so that when the circle came together it matched itself, if I make myself clear. I didn't want to cut it out over here so that the curves wouldn't match up. So if I take an equal amount, if I take an equal amount off the center line, then that should go together like that, make it a lot easier. And it just so happens that that falls more or less where these are, so within a fraction we're going to be fine. So if I cut it from there 1.25 inches is going to be to here, so it just nicely has the sprocket part in it, so we should get the sprocket in there okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut it with that laid down like that. So then, I'm making sure you're in sight all the time here, I can put a fence on and just slide this against it and make sure I cut it nice and square. So what I'll do is I'll cut it there first of all, and then I'll cut it there, and then these two parts will go together. This will have about 3/4 of an inch of this left, so when I've cut this piece out they'll go, can you see that yet? I'll have to get myself one of these technical things. I noticed some guys have like a little remote screen, and they can look at that to make sure everything's in shot, but I don't think I'll be pestered to spend that much. Anyway, to go back to the job in hand, we'll have enough here when this is taken out so that this will bolt up to that, and that's what I'm going to do. You see, I'll put the bearings in, I'll put the shaft in, and then I can bolt this up, and then we can weld it and make whatever adjustments we have to make for the chain to be able to come out of here, because as I say, there's enough room at the bottom, but I'm going to have to cut a piece of this out. What I'll probably have to do actually is cut a piece out of here as well, because the sprocket's going to come right to the back, you know, with the chain on. So we're going to have to do some clever stuff with this. So anyway, let me get this marked up, and we'll cut the 1.25 inch piece out of there. So here's our fence set up, the right distance to cut this. Then as I say, we'll move the fence over and cut the next piece. So let's see if I can do this without cutting my fingers off. go. I'll tell you what, that was bloody good alloy. So now this piece, we'll take that out there, and then that piece, whoops, where are we? We'll get welded on there. And as I say, we've got these here so we can actually bolt it all together. So let me move the fence and I'll cut the other piece off. Now I've put the back half in here, put the sprocket in, put the chain on. So as you can see, we've got our clearance at the back there. And you'll also notice that we're going to be able to bolt here and here. We're going to be able to get a bolt in through here and a bolt in through here, which is nicely going to make this much more rigid and not allow it to flex. This one I'm going to miss, unfortunately. I'm going to put a rod on here. This is basically from across the top, whoops, across the top of the sprockets. Alright, and as the wheel goes up, you see I'm going to keep the chain line will be coming up with it. That's probably, yeah, that's probably about as much movement as I'll get. So that one's fine. This one's touch and go, but I might be able to make a little piece to go in here. So that's that. Then this piece, this is the other piece. See, when that goes on, we're going to have to cut some of the back of this out to clear that. So we're going to cut a complete piece out of here. So that'll fit in. Then it'll bolt all the way through at the bottom. We're going to be able to put a couple of little pieces on the top to bolt into there. So this is really going to be, it's coming out better than I thought. So I'm going to cut the pieces out the back so I can put that on there. Well, I've popped some bolts in to get the holes lined up, and I got one long one through here to hold it all together. So first thing we notice is my plan for this end didn't work. In order to get things lined up, I couldn't centralize it, but as it happens, it's not going to be any problem. But the important thing is this in here. We now have the back part cut out, and when you look in there, I see I put a piece of chain on. As you can see, I think it turns nicely in there. Now what is going to happen is I'm going to have to, I think I'm going to put it on the bike now. I had a quick look, but I think basically the whole of this top piece is going to have to come out to get the chain line right at the top here. Now I'm not overly worried about that, because I was always planning to build a piece or to fabricate a piece to go from here onto there to make a sort of arch for the chain. So we're going to have these bolts here, these three that will go right through into there, and then this one and this one certainly are going to be in there, and I think possibly this one, and then we have this one as well. So if I have a piece in there to sort of make this continuous and all structurally sound, and as I say, the chain will come out the bottom down here and the chain will come out the top, and although they'll move a little with the wheel, I'm going to be able to put a cross brace in here. I think it's going to be rigid enough, because we're going to have it rigid. We're getting into Newton's laws here and everything, but the engine's going to be pulling the chain that way. That's going to be going that way. So obviously, if the chain is pulling against that, the wheel's going to be holding it at this end, so it's going to be tending to pull it back like that. So we need to be relatively rigid. The other thing that struck me is that this, of course, originally was, I don't know if you can hear it, it's pouring down now. Snow's just about gone, warmed up suddenly, and it's pouring down. What was I saying? What was I saying? Oh yes, this used to be an oil bath. The gears ran in oil. So this end, the bearing's no problem. What I'll do is I'll put a sealed bearing in there. But in here, of course, I can't put a seal bearing because I have this slightly strange, almost floating bearing, which is, you can see from this side, it's caged balls. Those balls will actually come out. The outer groove is a slightly unusual configuration, and as you can see here, the inner race is actually, because I don't have the other one in, is 2 pieces. So this can move a little, which is nice because it'll take my couple of thou. But of course it's a remarkably open bearing. So there is just enough space here to put an oil seal in. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to put an oil seal in, hopefully. Alright, so let me put this onto the bike, and then we'll see what we're going to need to cut out for the top. So I've bolted this in, it's bolted top and bottom, and put the sprocket in with a piece of chain on. What I've also done with the wheel is, over on the other side, I don't know if you can see it, no you can't, I've put in here just a piece of wood, it's only temporary, which is sort of set at the shortest length that the suspension units are going to be, on full depression. This is how far up the wheel's going to be. So this is as high as the chain will go. So basically, the chain's going to be on there like that. It's going to come along to be about like that. So as you can see now, all these 3 bolts here are going to be clear. So what I'm going to have to do is cut this piece out of here, but when I make my arch I'm going to be able to bolt it. In fact, it could be just more or less straight up, but it'll bolt into those, which is very nice. I thought I might have to make a new one for here higher up, but everything's going to bolt through, so that's going to be in really nice. Now I've noticed that actually I might have to take out just a fraction at the bottom, because this is as low as it's going to go, and that's about level with the sprocket. So I thought I had more space at the bottom, but apparently we haven't. So what I'm going to do is cut these piece out of the top so I can see the sprocket exactly right. Then I'm going to get the chain line right, because actually, as I say, I can move the sprocket on the rear wheel in a little bit. So we'll get that exactly right. Then I can move the back wheel up and down, and we can see where the chain's going to go and if I need to take some out of here. Just looking at it, the easiest thing to do might be able to take this fin section out and remake that completely, because I'm going to have one there's a long one goes through there, 2 bolts, 3 bolts, 4 bolts, 5 bolts holding that in there around that all the way through. So that should be pretty rigid, but hey, who knows what might happen. As I say, this lot might have ended up in the bin yet. So anyway, let me cut the top off this and slim down those spaces in the rear wheel. I just thought I'd show you what I was going to use to thin down these. Now see, they're only 1/2 inch, so getting a grip of that in the lathe chuck is not going to be easy. So what I'm going to use is these clever things. What it is a block with a 5C collet in it, and then of course it's all nice and square, so you can put that in the vise, and of course I can get a really good grip, square grip as well on this with the 5C collet. So they're really handy because you can put them in the vise like that as well, and then, you know, mill, turn it over, mill, turn it over, mill, and you can actually get hexagon ones as well. So if you wanted to do, you know, 6 flats on something, you just put it in and you can do it without needing a rotary table. Anyway, just thought I'd show you that because they're well worth the money. I've cut the fin piece off and I've offered it up once more, and I may have to take some off this bottom part, and that was starting to worry me about the integrity of it for when I welded the case up. So what I've done is bolted it together. I forgot to mention actually that both of these surfaces, this one and for this one here, I put in the mill and made sure they were absolutely square. they're all square to each other. So what I've done is I've put the bearings in, I put this end cap on, I put a little spacer in there which actually is about 1/8 of an inch too thick. Obviously the inner race of this whatever it is, self-aligning bearing goes in a little bit further than I thought. But as you can see, we've got nice room for the chain there, so because that goes on like that. But I'm not sure about this. As I say, I might have to cut some of this out. I just tried it and I think I'm all right. I've got to cut a piece out of there, but I think this is fine. So as I say, what I've done is I've built everything up, and as you can see, it actually spins quite nicely. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to make up some pieces to match with these two here onto there, full length from there all the way to there. This one obviously is going to have to be built up a little bit, and then I can bolt these on and weld them on nicely. And when I've done that, when I've got this bolted to that, I can see about making the top part. But the thing is, once I've got these on here, then those two together with, there's a long one actually that goes all the way through there, plus that one, even if I've got to do away with that one, I'm all now quite rigid in its structure, and I can start to make up the rest of it, and if need be cut some of this out without starting to it to be flimsy, if you follow me. So if nothing else, I'm pleased with that. That came out fine. So I think we're going to end up with a nice little case that'll just go on. If need be, there's a place on the engine casing. This goes in right close to the engine casing. There are 2 bolts that go in there because the cases, you know, bolt together because of their horizontal split. So what I'm thinking I could do is I can have a piece of aluminium welded onto here, you know, smooth it all in so that just sticks out there, and those 2 bolts would go through it, or even just one of them to go through it. And that's something else that would stop this wanting to be pulled this way as a reaction to the back wheel being in the opposite direction to the way the sprocket wants to turn. You can tell it's getting late, can't you? I'm not feeling too well either. But anyway, I'm going to call that for today. So when I come out tomorrow, as I say, we'll make these top mountings, get that all done, and go from there. Hey up everyone. Now the more observant amongst you will notice I'm not wearing my usual outfit. I've got my good hat on and my expensive jacket. Actually, it wasn't that expensive. But you were expecting us to finish this today, and so was I. But Christmas just sort of crept up on me, and I'm not going to have time to do it. So I thought what I'd do is just finish off this video with a little Christmas message. So I'm up to about 930 something subscribers now. So I want to thank everybody that's subscribed and who watches regularly. And I'd like to thank those people who comment, and particularly those people who have become regular commenters, so that we've sort of developed a little bit of a dialogue backwards and forwards. That's been a lot of fun and made the videos really worthwhile. Also, I found out recently that the videos are actually useful. There is a channel called AG Engineering, which is very good. You should watch it. It's good bike stuff, and he's a good engineer, good machinist. And he had a couple of wheels to rebuild, and in the video he mentions me a couple of times, and also in an email he said to me that it had been really handy. It had been really useful watching the video, and it had given him sort of the ideas to get him started and get going. So thank you for the compliment, and I'm glad to see that people are getting some value out of the videos. So there's people like Aid and Shed Built Dave, whose videos I watch, so hello to you guys. And I'd like to take a moment to be serious and thank Steam Shop Dave. Now actually we should all thank Steam Shop Dave, because it was him that nagged me into doing the videos in the first place. So thank you for that, Dave. Thank you for being a good friend. And thank you for teaching me two things. One, which anyone who watches his all-time Steam workshop videos will know, is you don't need £1 million worth of stuff to do really, really good work. That's something a lot of people, a trap they fall into. My other great passion is photography, and you know, it's always the same thing with that. People have got to have the newest and the best, and they lose sight of taking good pictures. Anyway, that's an aside. So back to Steam Shop Dave. So he taught me that, and the other thing he taught me was that you can just about do anything. You know, you go to some places and they look at the thing and, you know, well, I can't put this in the CNC machine, it's not possible to do it. Whereas Dave will, you know, get his blacksmithing tools out if need be. But he'll get stuff done, and I've developed that now. I don't think there's anything that can't be achieved. Might not be brilliant, but it'll work. And one last thing before I get off to my Christmas celebrations. What I've tried to do in my videos is not only show you that you don't need lots of equipment, although I probably have more than most, but that things go wrong. You know, I don't know everything. I do stuff wrong, I forget stuff, but just keep going. Come on, enjoy yourselves, get stuck in, get out in the shed, get some tools out. Alright, so that's all of that. So as I say, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. I've just got my first Christmas present. So that'll keep me occupied for a couple of hours. And I hope you'll be happily occupied over the holidays. And we'll see you in about a week or so. Bye now.